So I remember in Army officer school, they taught us this principle, and it's kind of funny and scary at the same time. They said, if you're ever not sure of something in a leadership scenario, so you're in front of troops, you're talking, you have to make a plan, execute it, whatever, just sound confident as you're making it up. Whatever you do, make sure you sound confident. And at the time, I was like, yeah, nope, I'm not doing that. Sorry. And I was like, this is terrible. This is absolutely terrible. But that's what they taught you. And that is what a lot of those guys do. And you see it and you learn to see it, right? So I have a friend who has been poking around with ChatGPT, and he asked some questions about honesty. And I said, oh, this is interesting because it sent me the results. And I said, this is interesting. So I'm writing a book about honesty. And so he asked questions like, what did Jesus teach about honesty? What would Jordan Peterson have to say about the importance of honesty? And I'm reading through these little summaries, and I'm like, because I'm a little familiar with what Jesus taught. I'm a little familiar with what Jordan Peterson teaches. And I thought, yeah, I could totally see this. That's fine. Like the references to the Bible, they're there. Okay, cool. Jordan Peterson. And then I cruised down to what would Joseph Smith Jr. have to say about the importance of honesty? And there's a quote here, and it says, it's impossible for a man to be saved in ignorance. And I'm like, yeah, I know that one. But then it says, or dishonesty. And I thought, I don't remember seeing that before. And maybe I'm wrong, and if I am, you can correct me, and it will seriously undermine the premise of this video. But the point will still hold. But please correct me if I'm wrong. Sorry, I just hit my knee. So I Googled it real quick, and I couldn't find this version of the quote. And I thought, well, that's a little weird, because it's quoting him, and suppose that that's just kind of totally made up. That's a little weird. And then I saw another one down here. The things of God can only be discerned by the Spirit of God, which dwells in those who are pure. Okay, and honest. I don't think that I remember that one being that way. And again, I might be wrong. I spent a sum total of maybe 30 seconds on each of these, okay? But I'm getting to a point. I thought to myself, deception, one strong tactic in deception is to speak some truths and then salt it with error. And what makes you really effective at this, if you want to manipulate people, is knowing a whole bunch of things that are true beyond the awareness of the person you're trying to deceive. And then you just weave in the untruths, the false items, in a way that leads them to a point that you have in mind. Of course, Satan did this in the garden. He tried to do this with the Lord during the temptations, etc. And people do this all the time today. And I thought, oh no, because what's happening is, first off, and I've mentioned this before, I've mentioned the big idea here before, which is the closing of the information window. Let's say you're 17 and you haven't spent the last 20 years of your life basically in a full-time effort of studying the scriptures. And you're using ChatGPT because it seems like where it's at, and you're researching these things, and you're going to look at this and you're just going to see this smattering of things that seem to make sense, and you're going to assume that if somebody is quoted as having said something, it's going to be a correct quote. What if it's not? Even without some sort of malevolent aim behind the scenes, this is a big problem, because what has happened is knowledge has become cheaper than it's ever been, but the wisdom to discern what is true, it's evaporating in real time. If you're some 17-year-old kid, you're not going to be able to detect these things, and the window for learning them is gone. It used to be, even just looking at Google, right? Because I went to Google to verify these things. You'd have pretty good search results, and that got tanked in the woke revolution. What we have now is curated information. It's not an automated way of seeing what is. It's a way of seeing what they want you to see. And you can't even page through results anymore. You have what they give you, and that's all there is to it. And in many cases, they've been caught completely editing these results, hand coding what you see for certain searches. That happened during the last presidential election. They got caught doing this. But also they're training their AI to do this for them. And it's an enormous problem. And I want to mention something quickly in this video. There was, and I happened to be a computer science professor during this time, there was an enormous push to produce more computer science degree holders, to train more people in tech. And there were all these projections. I probably still have some of them on my computer somewhere because I used to use them in various presentations I'd give either to parents or to the university administration to suggest that we needed to expand the computer science program, or that more kids should go into computer science. And there were these projections of job openings and everything else. Well, long story short, that's been a wave that's retracted now, and the tide has turned. And there have been massive layoffs in CS over the recent history. And basically, a very strong signal is being sent to young people: do not study computer science. Now, what does this have to do with the closing information window? You would be shocked at how well an education in computer science teaches you about critical thinking. You'd be shocked. I also have a presentation on this because it's a point I tried to help people understand. It is probably a better mechanism for learning logic and critical thinking and evidence evaluation and building hypotheses and testing hypotheses and propagating error into your belief network and all these other things. It's probably a better way of figuring all of that out and learning that than anything else we have available. And it's only been around for a couple of decades. And now the tide has turned. Very few people went through that training in the first place, but now no one else is going to, basically. I have been shocked to notice how many people watch this channel who have a background in tech. Now, maybe that's a coincidence. I don't think it is. When I think about all these concepts in the gospel and how extensively the Lord has used my understanding of computer science to teach me things about people, about the world, about the gospel, about Him, it has persuaded me that He's a computer scientist. Now, of course He is. He knows everything, right? But I think there's a deeper truth there than I care to talk about in this video. What's your point, Rob? I think that we have a body of people on the earth right this second who are better equipped to learn greater truth than any time in history. And I think the tide has turned and that those windows are closing. And this should get the hackles up on the back of your neck as far as the timing of things go. There's not going to be another bubble of people who have deep knowledge of computer science on this planet. If AI is successful in what they're trying to do with it, which I have my doubts, but I have detailed ideas on where that's actually going to go and why and everything else. But deferring all that, the short story is there will be far fewer people trained in this. And the folks who do it will have, the vast majority of them will have a very superficial understanding of it. Some few will have a much deeper understanding still. But things like this, they're changing in real time and people don't have a lens on it. It's changing so quickly. And it's like, I mean, you can make, it might seem like a weird connection, but it's another one of these building blocks on how male and female relationships are changing so quickly. And again, there's a whole bubble of people who will not experience traditional marriage and children who are alive right now. The set of people who have that is constraining very quickly, very quickly. And it's not going to come back until some really intense things happen. And so, yeah, another example of this, the radical nature of these changes and how no one's paying attention. I've been around young people in one form or another pretty much since I was in that demographic. And as you can tell from my hairline and the salt in my pepper, it's been a while. Okay. But you know, I was young, and then I worked for a few years and came back to school. And I was going to grad school with people who on the whole were a little younger than me. And I was there for a while. And then I became a professor, and I've been around the bachelor's degree cohort. It's been 3 years since I've been out of that, but it was 8.5 years as a professor and something like 7 years as a grad student, 3 years of working, give or take. And then I was a bachelor's student for 6, because for 2 of those years I was in South America. That's a pretty long haul. And so I had a lot of data points over time to see how young people were changing and how quickly this was happening. And it really affected me. And I've been talking about this, and I think a lot of people thought I was crazy, and a lot of people still do. And I'll give you plenty of reasons to think about it in the future. But my point with this is that things are changing quickly with this cohort, and people just are unaware. What's the data point that I've been prepping here for, setting this up? Something like 41% of people, was it 18 to 24 or something? I don't remember. I'm sorry, it's been a day or two since I saw the statistic. But a huge set of young people think it's okay that United Healthcare CEO was murdered, was hunted down. They think it's okay. That's enormous. That is an enormous shift in morality. And people just don't get it, you know? I had a conversation with a close friend the other day about, how difficult it is to get letters of recommendation from people who knew me during my university time, because no one wants to be associated with me, because I got canceled, and because that still is something that people are deathly afraid of touching. And it doesn't matter how much of my performance they're aware of, or my character, or the things that I did for other people, or whatever. And he just couldn't. He's like, I just don't understand. Why wouldn't someone give you a letter of recommendation? It's not like it would hurt them at all, or whatever. I was like, you don't get it. It really is that bad. It really is that bad. I saw one of the administrators from the university at Lowe's a week or two ago, and I had to pop in there to get a little part for this thing I was building. And I recognized him from behind. He was I was getting screws or something. And so, when you're trying to do that math, it's like you're in a different world. And I found what I needed, and I turned to go pay for it, and I saw him. And my immediate reaction was like, oh, I wonder how he's doing. Cool. Merry Christmas kind of thing, right? But then my brain caught up, and I noticed he had turned to hide from me, because he, I guess, came up behind me and he recognized me. And he had turned to hide from me. And the spirit kicked on, and I felt his shame. He was ashamed, because he was involved in all of this, and he obviously didn't do anything to stand up for me, even though he knew me really well, and he knew I was kicking butt at the things that he had a purview over. And I thought, I'll leave him alone. I won't say anything, because I don't want him to feel worse than he does. And so I walked off, and whatever, right? It's been 3 years. That guy, no one else would know. If I said hi to him and he was just a decent human being, and maybe he could get a little off his chest and feel a little better about himself, to know that, hey man, life is life. We move on. We get better. Merry Christmas. I really hope you have a good holiday. I hope life's going great for you. And Anyway, things are changing. It's happening very quickly. And it's so easy to live in a silo where you don't see these things, even though there's evidence all around that it's happening. So the information window, I've told you it's closing. Here's evidence right here. But if you know that quote and maybe this is correct, maybe you can cite it for me. But I think I found a bug here in ChatGPT.